Hey, gorgeous people. Happy upcoming solstice. Happy Pride. And, well, happy monsoon for Thailand. So I'm in Thailand and you can hear the raindrops hitting the tin roof, which I hope will not obscure what I'm saying too much. Um, I wanted to talk about conflation and how it has a tendency to obscure knowledge when it feeds into a kind of a little bit binary or sometimes singular thinking pattern, which is a little bit more lazy. I noticed that the Alice in Wonderland stories are very, it's not even like official mythology, it's literature. It's very sort of romantic era Victorian literature. Or is it, maybe it's turn of the century, maybe it's Edwardian. Anyway. So, but the effect of that kind of lazy thinking has afflicted it in the sense that there seems to be a habit of conflating the Queen of Hearts with the Red Queen. And they're different. They're different, damn it. And I get very, very worked up about this, especially when we're dealing with feminine archetypes who are powerful. There's a tendency to reduce it all to one. And it annoys me. Like, even if you look at Hinduism, there are multitudes of goddesses, but there is a trend to try to round them down to the consorts of the Trinity, so that if you look at the archetypes of Kali or Durga or Parvati, they have all been rounded down to this as if the same goddess. And yet, individually, the archetypes are so different and seemingly have very different histories as well. And so, yeah, like, I read the Alice in Wonderland books when I was young, Alice in Wonderland, and then Through the Looking Glass. And it was interesting to me that they had a new antagonist in The Looking Glass, the Red Queen, who was based on a chess piece, not a deck of cards. And it's almost like the human brain, especially when it's a little bit brainwashed by the patriarchy. Sorry, I'm using that word because it's convenient. And when I talk about the patriarchy, I don't want people to think that I'm talking about some kind of coalition of men who are conspiring to keep women down. I think it's a habit. I think it's a habit that comes from partial laziness and partial just that we have defaulted to putting men in a certain role for so long. It is not a conspiracy of oppression necessarily. I think it's more just that certain habits of oppression have become convenient for so long. And so, yeah, I think it's very annoying when the patriarchal thinking is always the default, and that patriarchal thinking tends, to my mind, to favor simplistic thinking. Like, let's not worry about the difference between Kali and Durga. They're basically the same. And then the philosophy of Hinduism is often used, which is that it's all one source. Then it's used as an excuse to be kind of lackadaisical about symbolism. Now, for me, like, what's inspiring about polytheism and pagan traditions, or even animistic traditions, is the celebration of diversity in a spiritual way. So when I'm like being finicky about iconography, like, no, that's not Durga, that is Parvati, because it's showing an archetype who is peaceful, renunciate, and also withdrawn. Like, the energy of Parvati is so introverted, so inaccessible, so removed. The name Durga actually means accessible, but when you see Durga, she's very extroverted, she's very engaged, whereas the archetype of Parvati is very almost glacial, like a Himalayan glacier. And so when I get finicky about those details, it's not that I'm being like a stickler for I'm not meaning to be like intellectual and uptight and worldly in my thinking. It's not like this sort of I don't know, like nerdy math genius. I mean, it might come across like that, but it's more like I want to show respect for the distinction of the archetype. It's not that I don't understand that it's one source and that when you access Durga, you are really ultimately showing praise to the Paramatma, or if you venerate Parvati, that you're also venerating the Paramatma, the supreme spirit, being, consciousness. I get that, but I also think that there is a kind of bhavana. Bhavana is a word that means when you perform an act with pure love and pure awareness. So it's like mindfulness, if you like. I feel like there is, when you show respect for all the distinctions and particularities of that particular divinity, and I'm not saying like you always have to follow the rules that are prescribed by the temple or whatever, but when you show a kind of awareness of the distinctions and the, again, particularities, you're actually showing your bhavana, your true devotion, through awareness, alertness, and attention, sensitivity to those things. And it was just funny that like this kind of like tendency, particularly when dealing with goddesses, because Vishnu has a number of avatars and aspects, and some aspects which are very different archetypes but are not avatars officially. Like you have Jagannath from Puri, which means Lord of the World, which is the face that looks almost like a mask. And then there's Dwarkanath. These are kind of like more closely associated with Krishna than with Vishnu, who is worshipped in Mumbai especially, but he's the Lord of Dwarka, the Lord of Portals, and the Lord of the West. And he's in this posture, and he's the Lord with the diamond tear. Nobody's confused about this stuff. They're not like, oh, it's Vishnu. They're just, they actually know, okay, no, that's the diamond tear, and he's holding his arm up because actually he's, it looks like he's dancing, but he's holding up the Govardhan mountain. And Lord Venkateshwar, who is also, in my ashram, was always associated with Shyam, the Black Lord, the Lord of the Ether, with the visor over. It's a V-shaped visor that covers his eyes to keep him from destroying the universe, because if he opens his eyes, the gaze of truth will set everything on fire. And so he has to have his eyes covered and always closed. And then the V is like the thing that you focus on to access the ether. It is the portal to the Akash. Yeah, so the reason that I love all these particularities is because they're so rich in symbolism and they're so profound, I think. And I think when you get into them, if you're studying this stuff, it might seem, oh God, it's so much to learn. But you can also just keep it simple and then just worship the Paramatma, close your eyes and meditate on your breath or your consciousness, and then that's as good. But there's also a value in focusing on the detail. One of the meditation techniques that my guru used to prescribe was not just to watch the space, but also try to separate, like when you close your eyes, you see all these like little specks whirling. And he would say, if you have trouble concentrating, one thing you can do is try to separate out colors of the specks that appear before your eyes when your eyes are closed. I think it's like something that your mind projects because it can't handle a nature abhors a vacuum, right? So it can't handle the idea of nothing. So it creates this like almost screen of snow, but it's like multicolored. And anyway, so yeah, so you can let it all go and be like just one with the Paramatma, or you can focus on something very unique and individual, and that also has the power of concentration that brings you into focus. And this is really a ramble. You know, I thought I was just going to talk about the Red Queen and the Queen of Hearts. I always found the Red Queen very mysterious because it was not clear to me in Through the Looking Glass that she was bad or tyrannical necessarily. She was sort of a bit stroppier than the White Queen, but it wasn't that clear that she was as much of an antagonist as the Queen of Hearts. Like the Queen of Hearts is off with their heads, off with, what is it she says? If something isn't done about it in less than no time, I will have everyone beheaded all round. And it was this last argument that had everyone looking so nervous and uncomfortable. That was my favorite passage from Alice in Wonderland at the croquet game when the Cheshire Cat appears with only his head floating, and then the Queen wants it beheaded, and then the King. Actually, my favorite argument, it comes from the King of Hearts, because the executioner says you can't cut a head off a body that doesn't have a trunk to sever it from. I'm not going to start doing that. I've never done that before in my time of life, and I'm not going to start now. And the King says, the King's argument was that anything that had a head could be beheaded, and you weren't to talk nonsense. And that was my favorite, because it's like the most confident, nonsensical argument out of all of them. And then the Queen kind of trumps it with her final, if something isn't done about it in less than no time, everyone's going to get beheaded. Anyway, yeah, and that's different to me. So why is it that in the films now we're using the terms Red Queen and Queen of Hearts interchangeably? It's so silly. Different. You can have more than one queen. I know it's a lot to stretch your brain to the idea that there could be more than one female powerful archetype, but you can do it. There's a whole portion of our brain that we don't use, and it could be for, feminine archetypes. I don't know. Because typically it was usually the polytheistic traditions that even had them at all. Like goddesses or... So it does favor a mind that is open to diversity and complexity, intricacy. And not so much the mind that just wants to efficiently get it done, which is, I think, more what monotheism is about. And then, as tends to happen with nature, if you try to make something simple, it divides into complexity, which is why with, Islam you have Sunni and Shiite, and then those have different schools. In Buddhism you have Mahayana, Vajrayana, Theravada, and in Christianity you have Protestantism, Catholicism, Eastern Orthodox, and then within those there are so many denominations. So the complexity happens anyway. My only objection with a lot of those religions is that it seemed to hurt the art, because when it was like basically a millennium of in Europe, it was a millennium of Madonna and Child iconography, which before that it had been all these deities, they're animals. And then what's really interesting is in Islam they forbade the depiction of Muhammad, Allah, and also any people, because they were made in God's image. So you would think then that it would be very bland, but actually you know, the Persian art is incredible. I mean, they focus more on birds and plants, but then it became this burgeoning of art, especially in the early, like, kind of Church of Antioch period, or sorry, not the Church of Antioch, but different. It's Christian. Um, I'm thinking of like Ottoman Empire. Anyway, uh, oh, what a tangent! What a tangent! What a tangent! Well, that is what this video is about. It's about complexity. It's about the beauty of complexity and exploring it and celebrating it and reveling in it. So, one of the reasons that I refused to cancel The Mists of Avalon as a book is because it was the only spiritual book I had read where they had I think it was like 8 powerful female characters who were magic users and had different personalities and were complex and strange, and they didn't. There was no need to conflate them. Then when they did the movie, they conflated them. Well, who needs all these women? We're gonna dispense with Nimue and with Nidian and Raven, and we're just they had Raven. We're just gonna have like the top 3, which is still a lot, actually. Like by today's standards, that's still a lot. So the Mists of Avalon movie is still worth watching, but yeah, like let the girls out, let them out and let them burgeon in terms of their relevance as unique archetypes. All right, did I get out what I wanted to say? I think so. There's construction going on, and the rain has stopped, but now there's some banging next door because they're building. Bangkok is a city where we just keep building and burgeoning, and it's all about the diversity. Just keep building. That's why there's statues of Brahma everywhere, because we're always creating. All right, I'm so done. I nonsensical ramble, but anyway, I love you all. And yeah, the Red Queen is not the Queen of Hearts. I don't know if anybody else noticed this, but they're not the same. So I refute that tendency to conflate them, and I refute the tendency to conflate Kali, Durga, and Parvati. Let them be as they are, the warrior, and the Kali is like the goddess of time and black magic, or dark magic. I don't want to say black magic. Esoterica that is dark and menacing, and then Parvati is the goddess of meditation and remote places. All right, bye.